God when you're giving me the go? Okay. Thanks, Kid One. When I tell my car to text Kid One or call Kid One, it hears Godwin. Yeah, so I texted her and called her so many times. Good afternoon. I'm Dan Crawford, Senior Director of Public Affairs for the North Carolina League of Conservation Voters. I'm very proud to be here today with these fantastic leaders from the North Carolina General Assembly and the environmental community, Representative Maria Cervania and Taryn Hall from Climate Power. They understand better than anyone how Republicans in Washington and Raleigh have let down the people they're supposed to be serving while rewarding greedy corporations that they choose to serve over the people. Over many years, Republicans have given away the store to the oil, gas, and utility lobbyists and executives who donate tens of thousands of dollars to their campaigns and spend millions in dark money to elect them. Duke Energy is reaping those rewards, and they have left hardworking North Carolinians paying the bill, specifically higher power bills. Let me give you a couple of examples of how this has happened. Taryn will talk more about what's happened in Washington, but there have been plenty of awful stuff happening right here in Raleigh. Last year in the building, on the other end of this mall, former Duke Energy North Carolina State President and former State Senator Paul Newton introduced a bill that would allow Duke Energy to charge us for power plants before they are even completed. That's like paying a car payment for a car you don't drive yet. The bill would also charge industrial customers lower rates than residential customers, and it eliminated clean energy goals that make us more dependent on dirty coal and dirty natural gas. 2 independent studies found this bill could cost North Carolinians billions of dollars in the process. To be specific, $23 billion by the year 2050. Because as you may have noticed recently, gas prices are a little volatile. Governor Stein rightfully vetoed the bill, but the Republican-controlled legislature overrode his veto. The other venue where Duke keeps winning is the North Carolina State Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Paul Newby. Since 2015, the Supreme Court has heard at least 7 cases involving Duke, winning every one of them. Duke Energy is a company that Chief Justice Newby and his wife are invested in. Each of these cases, Newby sided with Duke. And in the latest case, North Carolina Supreme Court voted 5-2 to affirm the Utilities Commission 2023 decision to award significant rate increase to Duke Energy. Justice Anita Earls was one of 2 Supreme Court justices to vote against this decision, calling the approval of higher profit margin for Duke Energy, and I quote, plainly unlawful and arbitrary, unquote. So now we're here today at the North Carolina Utilities Commission, which is currently controlled by Republican appointees thanks to another power grab by the legislature. It's considering Duke's latest request for a 9.3 increase for residential bills over the next 2 years. Duke originally wanted to raise residential bills by over 18%, but lowered the request after intense public pressure and questions from many elected officials who aren't so beholden to Duke, and they lowered it again just last week. While Duke has already proposed settling a case for Duke Energy Carolinas for this latest amount, Governor Stein and Attorney General Jackson want to do more to help hardworking North Carolinians afford clean energy. They want to be sure Duke and data centers aren't passing massive costs on to residential customers, and they want it in writing. Attorney General Jackson is officially intervening in this case that is being heard today. He wants Duke profits to be lowered. For every dollar Duke spends on building power plants, they currently make 10 cents guaranteed. And they get to recover 100% of the money they spend on fuel, paid for by customers like you and me. It's not surprising that Duke wants to spend $103 billion over the next 10 years, largely to build dirty gas plants rather than cheaper solar and wind energy. They don't make as much money that way. Poor Duke. They're barely scraping by on $5 billion in profits they made last year. And last week they announced they're already on track to make even more this year. Clearly they need this increase. They need us to shut up and pay the bill. I say enough is enough. I stand with Attorney General Jackson and support his request to the North Carolina Utilities Commission to just say no to Duke Energy and their beneficiaries. Cut Duke's guaranteed profits. Stop raising our bills to pay for it. Stand up for the people of North Carolina and hold legislative leaders accountable for making sweetheart deals with Duke. Thank you, and now I'll turn it over to Taryn.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone. My name is Taryn Hall, and I am the North Carolina State Director with Climate Power. And I'm thankful for you all being here today. It is very hot, as you all know, but I think this is a really important issue for us to cover. Before I turn the podium over to Rep. Servania, I'd like to acknowledge how expensive everything has been over the past few months. If you do your own grocery shopping, you've noticed your favorite staples are higher than they were last year. If you're buying gas, which most of us do, you know that those prices are up higher than they were last year. We are all feeling the strain of this, not just utilities, but groceries, gas, and healthcare. Recent research from Climate Power and the Center for American Progress Action Fund shows that since the passage of the Trump administration's One Big Beautiful Bill last year, the costs have risen for North Carolina families by $19,064 per household, and that is only through the first part of this year, so through June 30th. If that family bought their health insurance through the ACA marketplace, that cost has risen, that total climbs to $3,477. By the end of 2026, those totals could grow to $3,040 and $6,065 respectively. I don't know about you all, but an extra few $1,000s is not something many people can afford. Additionally, the war in Iran and the Trump administration's efforts to block clean energy here in North Carolina have raised gasoline and utility prices in North Carolina by about $390. By the end of 2026, those costs could grow to $857 if those costs continue to rise at the same rate. The reality is that North Carolina families cannot afford these rising bills. We say no to rate hikes. Our bills are just too high across the board. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rep. Servania.
Thank you so much, Taryn. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for being here and continuing to say no to unfair rate hikes and all that is happening here when it comes to our utility bills, what is happening with Duke, and just overall the lack of affordability for all our North Carolinians. My name is Maria Servania, and I serve you as your North Carolina State Representative. For families across North Carolina, affordability is not an abstract policy debate. It is the electric bill sitting on the kitchen counter. It is the grocery bill, the rent or mortgage, healthcare, childcare, and everything else that costs more than it did just a few years ago. And electricity is not an option. From 2017 through 2024, residential electric bills in North Carolina have climbed nearly 30%. Families are already stretched with their budgets, and some are facing the very real possibility of having their power disconnected. We see it in our office. We're trying to help in every way, but this is untenable. Yet Duke Energy came before the Utilities Commission asking for those same families to pay even more. Originally, Duke sought an increase of 18%, as Mr. Crawford had said. And this is a company reporting billions of dollars in profit. Billions. North Carolinians looked at that and said, enough. They spoke at hearings, they submitted comments, advocates organized, Attorney General Jeff Jackson challenged that proposal. And something important happened. Duke reduced its request to approximately 9.3, 9.5%. That does tell us something we should never forget. Public pressure works, but 9.5% is still too much. As a legislator and someone who serves in the House Energy and Public Utility Committee, I believe we have a responsibility to ask the very basic question: who should pay for the enormous investments coming to our electric grid? North Carolina is growing. Advanced manufacturing is growing. And data centers, some of the largest electric users we have ever seen, are coming to our grid. Those investments cannot become another bill handed to our working families. It is a massive data center if a massive data center is required for new generation, new transmission lines, or other expenses that infrastructure will require, then that large customer should be bearing the cost of it that it creates. Remember, families should not subsidize some of the largest and most profitable corporations in the world, not just in North Carolina, in the world. And we have to demand accountability from Duke as well. When a monopoly utility asks for more money from captive customers, the burden should be on the company that demonstrates that every dollar is necessary, prudent, and fair. It should be spent and looked upon that way. That is why what happens at the Utility Commission matters. It also is a reason why what happens in the General Assembly matters. And ultimately, what happens at an election matters. An election, you cast your vote, and this is your voice, and it matters. Governor Josh Stein has opposed these rate increases. Attorney General Jeff Jackson has challenged them too. Justice Anita Earls raised serious concerns about whether ratepayers are being treated fairly, and they're not. But ultimately, this is a bigger than any other elected official's power. It is about who our energy system is designed to serve. North Carolinians deserve reliable power. We deserve a modern grid capable of supporting our growing economy. But we also deserve electricity that families can afford. Every North Carolina family should be able to afford. So tomorrow, or every time that the Public Utilities Commissions meet, when the Utilities Commission holds its final expert witness hearings, let's make sure that they know North Carolinians are still paying attention. We see them. We are watching. We spoke up to Duke, asked for the 18% in that reduction, and it made a difference. Now, we are going to keep speaking up, watching, and making sure they're accountable. There should never be any blank check to any corporation, no shifting corporate costs onto families, and no unnecessary rate hikes. So let's keep saying no, and let's keep fighting for an energy system that puts people over profits. Thank you so much. Who do I pass this to?
Thank you. That wraps us up, and we'll take questions if there have any, and do it offline as well. All right, thanks everyone for coming out.